Many businesses were impacted negatively by the COVID pandemic to the extent that they were forced to close their doors. Now, of course, things are starting to reopen. We're seeing some businesses reopen in New Brunswick in particular. We're talking about reopening plans going across the country. But what if you can't reopen? What if you cannot start business as normal? Today, we're going to talk to Alan Doyle. And, he was about to go on tour, or I think he actually was on tour in the middle of this COVID pandemic. Now he's home in St. John's. Hello, Alan.
How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for joining us here. So let's back up to mid-March when the pandemic really hit everyone's social conscience, and we were talking about self-isolation in a big way. Where were you at that time?
Around the 8th or 9th of March, we finished the first leg of the Canadian tour, which took us west. So we started in the prairies and made our way to Vancouver. I think Sunday, the 8th of March, by memory, was the last gig. And on the 9th of March, I flew home, and all of our truck and our 2 tour buses were turned around and were deadheading back to Mississauga, to where we were supposed to start the second leg of the Canadian tour in Mississauga around the 20th or so of March. And of course we never did start it. All that stuff is just orphaned in the middle of Ontario right now, and or different places, and we never ever got back to it. And so we just got stopped, unfortunately for me, right before the biggest, most lucrative part of our 2-year cycle. And the way I've been trying to explain it to people is like, most touring bands operate on an 18 to 24 month cycle for most bands. If you're U2, it might be a 36-month cycle, or a little bit longer. But for most touring bands, it's around a 2-year cycle, because that's about the amount of time you can safely go back to a market, right? Like, for example, you play, downtown Winnipeg, at the Burton Cummings Theatre. You can play that once every 2 years, but not really much more than that. So the most lucrative part of our 2-year touring cycle is the part that was just coming up. So our stuff was heading for Southern Ontario, where of course the drives are short, the population and economy are big. And so you get gigs like 2 nights at the Danforth Music Hall in Toronto. You get the London, Ontario play. You get Kitchener-Waterloo Centrewood Square. You get the Ottawa NAC. All those are the biggest. Those are the biggest gigs and the biggest paydays in the touring world in the country, and those are exactly the ones we missed.
So tell me a little bit about how important it is for a musician like yourself to tour, like, in terms of your revenue stream. People often forget that the entertainment business is actually still a business. So, what does touring mean to you?
Oh, when I started in the music biz in the early 90s, touring was significant then. It was half or more of what you could do for a living. And of course, every brushstroke since then, all the other sources of revenue have gone down. Selling music, making CDs, television appearances, all that stuff has dropped, basically away to nothing, so touring, even as recently as 5 to 6, even 10 years ago, has become practically 100% of your revenue. Even like if you include merchandising, all that stuff is all generated by going out and playing live. And by the biggest reason for that, of course, over the last 20 years, if you will, is that the sale of music has become free, right? And so music now, like the songs that I would write here in my little home studio or wherever, I used to be able to make money from them, and almost nobody makes any money from the sale of music anymore. It's become like a lost leader to get the touring, and it's the reason why bands like me are out there all the time, and it's the reason why bands that you never thought would tour again are out there. So fellas like me are out on the road competing with Fleetwood Mac, and it's true.
No pressure. No pressure.
Yeah, I mean, it's on every level, touring is by a factor of 10 the more important than anything else in the live music business right now.
So when people go to a performance, they see you, they see your band on stage, they see the musicians doing their thing, but there are a lot more moving parts to this than just the people who are on stage. How challenging is it to take all of those moving parts and reschedule events?
It's not, well, again, because of the competition over the last decade and the increasing competition for theater availability, all that kind of stuff, because Fleetwood Mac is touring again, the competition for those availabilities have been getting worse and worse. And of course, now that everybody is positioned the same, we're all just waiting for the green light to go on, and we don't know when it's going on. So when it goes on, it's going to be a dogfight, right? Can you imagine, like, I always, like, for people in Atlantic Canada, I just try to think of, like, take the Cohen in Halifax, or the Arts and Culture in St. John's. But the Cohen in Halifax is a little bit of a better example because it's drivable still in a driving tour in the country, right? I mean, it's difficult to get a Friday or Saturday at the Cohen at the best of times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you imagine trying to rent that theater in the next 4 years? It's going to be almost impossible. And so rescheduling it is part of the problem. And as I say, one of the big problems is the stoppage, right? Because it stops everything and can't go make money. A much harder thing is the fact that we don't know when the green light's going on.
Right.
If we knew for sure
mm-hmm.
that we could hit the road January, for example, then that's what we planned for, but we don't. And so it's a bit of a holding pattern. But something else you said is worth emphasizing for everybody too, is that, when Alan Doyle or Jan Arden or Brian Adams schedules or reschedules or cancels a gig, there's a lot more people affected than Jan Arden, Brian Adams, and Alan Doyle. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just in my little world, there are sort of 3 tiers, not including me excluded.
Yeah.
There are kind of 3 tiers of people who make money from those appearances, right? There are the people who on the day are in my camp that make their day rates for doing it. That includes the side musicians, the Corey Tedfords of the world, and then there are technicians, bus drivers, and then there's a whole second tier of people that are local that make money because that thing is happening, right? So that's the theater in Windsor, Ontario. That's the person who works the bar in the theater in the Windsor, Ontario. That's the caterer. That's the theater people. That's all the people around the restaurants that make money because on a Wednesday night in February in Windsor, there's 1,500 people downtown in the theater, and all that kind of economy. And then there's a whole nother level of people that have been working for months to make sure
mm-hmm.
that date happens. And that includes managers and agents and concert promoters and advertisers, and all that economy exists around, that tour bus rolling in behind that theater time and time again.
Right. So what does it mean to you then when someone looks at a canceled concert and says, I want my money back?
Totally legit, first of all. What I've been sort of suggesting to people, I wouldn't dare ask, but I sort of suggest, people have been asking me since this whole thing went down, how can we help the musicians during this time? And
mm-hmm.
one of the things I've been suggesting to people is, like, look, if you have a ticket to a concert that's been rescheduled and if it's at all possible, keep your ticket and try to come to the gig when it's rescheduled, because everybody's
mm-hmm.
trying really hard to not lose those gigs, and everybody's trying really hard to make sure they happen in the fall or early in the new year, whenever the green light goes on. So that's a big help, and even if you can't make it yourself, I've been asking, consider gifting it for Christmas. Consider, like, that, keeping those tickets sold in the economy is a big deal for bands at every level. And again, not just the bands, but all those other people who are working around those gigs.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're in a very unique position there. You have a perspective as, you're one of Canada's most popular musicians. You are touring the world on a regular basis. I mean, how do you see this playing out in a broader global spectrum in terms of the music industry? What does this mean?
I talked to Ed Robertson from Bare Naked Ladies, my friend Ed, the other day, and he, his notion and was, I think, a very clear one, because he, far greater than me, those guys, have a very big domestic business in Canada, but of course more than more than half of their business is in the UK and in United States and in Germany and those places. And he, suspected that our business will be one of the normal, and I think that's probably true, that there will be large scale gatherings for sporting events and concerts, will require both a confidence for audience members, but it'll also require a big, massive, full-on green light from everything from municipal governments right up to countries, and then for people like me and Ed, and that also requires not just green lights to fully go on within countries, but green lights to go on at borders, and to drive. I wouldn't feel very confident right now putting all my gang on a tour bus in Vancouver and driving south to try to cross the border into Seattle.
Right.
I don't know when we're going to be able to do that again. Probably not until 2021 at the very earliest.
Right. I did notice on your website this morning that there were still showing tickets on sale for later this year. That even I think up until May 26th, that concert hadn't been canceled as yet. Are these things that are still ongoing? It's a slow rollout, and you see how how long the isolation continues.
Yeah, it's all about not knowing when the green light's going on, and so we keep as best we can. We keep pushing them down the road. So the concerts that we had for now, we rescheduled it to June. I'm 99.9% sure none of them will happen. And all that stuff in late May and June will have to roll into the fall, or most likely into early 2021, because they just, first of all, we have no idea if we're going to be able to do it in the fall. And secondly, the competition for the nights in the theaters and in the venues gets harder and worse every single day. So it's, while it is, the most important thing is to try to be ready for when the green light goes on. It's also the most difficult thing, because everybody in the world in the music business is waiting for that, looking for that green light, and the it's going to be very, very, very difficult to try to stay in the mix.
We're hearing a lot from different businesses on how they suspect that the way they operate is going to change. What was normal will not be normal into the future. Do you see any changes to the music industry?
Well, we've already seen a bunch about people making way more of online opportunities. I've been doing a bunch of from home kind of internet concerts on Facebook and a few other platforms to raise money for $1 a day to help some charities across the country. And very soon I'm going to have to start doing it for the Alan Doyle charity for my own self. And there's a few companies. There's one called Side Door that has really basically just put together a platform where a performer can perform from their home, and you can buy a ticket to the access code for that Zoom meeting effectively. And so there's things like that going on. But and that may turn into something bigger. Who knows? Artists are generally creative people, and they're inventive, and people. It's been refreshing how hungry people are still for music. I must say, that still makes me feel good.
Well, I've seen a number of your, your fundraising concerts for $1 a Day Foundation, and been really impressed with the increasing sophistication of your home broadcast.
Thank you very much.
Has it required a steep learning curve on your side?
Yes, it has. And again, it's I'm a little bit tech savvy, I suppose, as you can see from around me here, probably. But where some of us are gear geeks, so broadcasting is not really one of the things I wanted to get into. But it's weird to be in your basement studio, looking at a number on your Facebook thing, and there's 10 or 11,000 people watching you, but you have no idea if what you're doing is registering. It's like, I have no idea if anyone's liking any of it. And especially if you're like me and you spent, I've been standing in front of people in person really since I was 12.
Yeah.
And it's odd to be down here by yourself and be both the performer and the broadcaster and the technician and
Right.
but it's part of it. And I think, it's just, we're all trying to do, I think we're all just trying to make hay in whatever way we can right now. And being super grateful that people are sticking with us, to be honest.
Right. I know the federal government has introduced a lot of different programs to try to help as many aspects of the economy as they can. Have any of those programs been applicable to you specifically, or the music industry in general?
Yeah. Yeah. The most basic ones, of course, I think it's called the CERB, right?
Yes.
Where just about anybody can apply and get the basic $2,000 a month. And I think a lot of day rate people are jumped at that right away, because of course because they can, and because they need it. And also I think because it was a great relief that they were worried that, day rate people who are on contracts or individual service providers, like, guitar players, bass players, truck drivers, whatever, that they don't usually qualify for unemployment insurance, right? So they were worried that there wouldn't be anything for them, and there is, and that's great. And then there's other, if you have small business like I do, my Skinnersville Music Foundation, or my core small business is that employs me and pays contract rates to other people, and is basically the small business that runs Alan Doyle Inc. I apply for some of the things as well, like the I can't remember the acronym, but the one where bank loans are forgiven at $10,000 over 40, that kind of thing. And
Right.
There's another one that started yesterday that I applied for as well, which is the wage subsidy, right? So that I think the CEWS, is that what that's called? Where the government will fund up to 75% of employees' wages, right? So I have a few employees in my little company that I can probably get some. I can get some relief for their salaries. But I also just heard something about there may be a program going on for students for the summer. Did you hear about that?
Yeah,
So if you're thinking,
students can apply for a subsidy, and I think it's $12.50 a month. They can either do some volunteer work, or post-secondary students can earn a certain amount of money and still qualify for the $12.50 a month.
Yeah, I was like, I think I'm going to hire a couple of students. Like,
Excellent.
Come live in Alan Doyle world for a summer. Oh my God.
So is that an official call out? We'll include that.
That's right. Oh my God. Yeah, this is too crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
But,
come to the nocturnal world.
Alan, I want to thank you so much for your time and for finding ways to ensure the show goes on.
I know. Off we go, girl. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.